Well, welcome everybody. As my brother Gary mentioned, this is a joint effort between In Business Links. That's his company. You got Fustino Brothers. That's three brothers, Russ, myself, and Gary and Rich. We'll have them introduce each other in a second. Also, Algorand. I'm a technical evangelist for Algorand and FBIapps. Right, that's our Fustino Brothers Inc. Logo. And so here is our pictures. And I'll go ahead and start with the oldest brother there, Rich. We'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody.
I'm the musician in the family. I write songs. I teach guitar and have many students. I have 35 a week. I do the Adult Week of Rock. I do the Kids Week of Rock in August. I don't know if we're going to do it this year. It'll be 13 years in a row. And I work on the Jethro Tull newsletter every month. So if you don't have a link to that, please feel free to request it, and we'll send you a copy of the Jethro Tull newsletter. And that's about it. I've been doing this for many years now.
And he does all the content for the app. So he gathers all the videos and everything else. So, all right, Gary, go ahead.
Okay, I do the design, the business social media, and the marketing for the group for FBI, that is FBIapps, shortened for Fustino Brothers Inc. And get involved with website design, as I mentioned, business social media, which is a little bit different than a consumer model. We do it for small businesses as well as institutions and schools, and PowerPoints, if you will, as well. All right, take it away, Russ.
Cool. Yes, I was a former MVP, Microsoft Most Valuable Professional from 2013 to 18. And currently I am a developer advocate for Algorand, loving every minute of that particular role. And I'm going to bring a bunch of that goodness here today. I will be the presenter presenting this great session we have on tap. So let's go ahead and also cover this slide, a couple more, and then we'll get into it. This is our copyright we got in the Jethro Tull app, available in all the stores. And this is where you can find out more information about it up at FustinoBrothers.com, and feel free to download that and let us know what you think. We have a new release coming out soon, and that's going to include the store, and this will be accessible through the app. It is available right now on storenvy.com. It'd be FBIapps.com. We do have some scarves if anybody wants to buy those, and $1 of the sale. You got yours. Yeah, that's cool.
I'm putting mine on right now. You see that?
Oh, yeah. Geez. I like it.
Like that, right?
Boy.
It's actually one of those that slides over your head and goes under your neck, and you could pull it up. It's really cool.
I got another order for one today, too.
Okay. All right. We'll continue on here. So exciting times there.
I just wanted to say one more thing.
Yeah.
When I came to Florida, I always wanted to work on the beach. So I guess this is the closest I'm going to get with a Zoom background.
Oh my God.
That's right. That's good. That's good. Yeah, you've heard of Code on the Beach. That's a conference up in Jacksonville, one I love, and that's the same idea there. But anyway, we will contribute. So $1 of the sale will be matched by Fustino Brothers. So they are pretty cool masks. They're 8x16. One of them says Week of Rock, and the other one has 64 album covers on it from Jethro Tull. So that's the FBIapps Tull over the neck scarf. And we will donate to Act.me, which was on TV last night.
Which is part of the Worldwide Health Organization. Yep.
Yes.
Right, and I put that information up there together at home. That's their website right there at the bottom. Okay. All right, we are going to do this at the end. We'll have a little talk. We want to make sure we get enough time to do the content, but if you do have a question, just raise your hand, and my brothers will see your hand up on their screen, and they'll let me know, and we'll have you go ahead and ask it, reactions, or you can type in the chat window too for questions as well. All right, let's go ahead and get started with our session here today. Blockchain is not the future, it's the present. And this was actually taken right from the China blockchain report, 2019, 2020, very recent. Several different verticals are actually using blockchain. For those that are brand new, in fact, how many here are consider themselves fairly new to blockchain. You just go ahead and press that wave on the reaction, and my brothers can count it up.
It would be me right here.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I thought we were doing
Good.
that.
Got a few of you?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. And so basically for those that are new, it is basically, the way I like to think of it is a read-only database that's distributed. So read only, write once, and you're writing once anytime you're creating a new block, which can be considered or is analogous to a record, right, in a database. And associated with a block, you can have transactions that occur. So the transactions are recorded in conjunction with that block. And due to the hashing algorithms between the blocks, it becomes very, very secure and easily detectable if anyone's made any changes in the chain. And so there's your reason why it's so secure. In terms of blockchain, the primary use case is to maintain the integrity of data, period. In China, this has many different ways. So in the medical field, for example, you may go to the doctor's office and you got to fill out all sorts of information the first time you see the doctor. Well, A, you may be incapacitated. You may not be able to do that. B, you may not be able to read or write. C, you may be in an area that, you forget your medicines. Maybe you don't have them on a list on you. So there's a lot of problems with that. And you really need, the medical professionals really need to have this globally accessible and immediately available under any scenario. So what's happening is they're starting to write this out to the blockchain, so you have that information readily available. And of course, it would be in an encoded format, and we'll talk more about that as well. So it would be private to that extent, but so that's a very good use case. And I was just at the doctor a couple weeks ago, and I was like, man, I can't believe a new doctor, I can't believe I got to, sit here about a half hour and fill all these same questions over and over and over again. You got to do it every time. So that's a big area where they are actually starting to implement the blockchain. And then you get to charities. A good example there that China gave in the block report was Red Cross actually misused funds back in some of the earthquakes about a decade ago. And again, anytime you need an audit trail, blockchain, you get that, right out of the gate. That's what you get. You get it basically. You can think of that, that distributed database I told you about. That's really a ledger, and a ledger of transactions from and to accounts, and you got accounts, you got transactions, you got assets. I'll talk about. These are all part of the blockchain. So with charities, China's using blockchain to have a better record of exactly what's coming in with the charities and exactly where it's going. Now, the automotive industry, I think of used car salesmen, which is notorious, for lack of trust and, giving misinformation, about cars. Well, what they're doing now in China is they're actually putting IoT devices in the cars, and they are having this data fed automatically and then captured up on the blockchain. So now you have very, very accurate, maintenance records on the vehicles. And now, in fact, used cars, I think sales are increasing more so than new cars, especially with the economy the way it is right now with the virus and everything. So this is what they're seeing happen today. Telecom industry, another one. Identity theft, very prevalent. I was planning to go to China a few months ago. That trip got canceled, thank goodness. And then what happens is, with the telecom, the identity theft happens. Some of these folks will get your phone number, and then they'll pretend they're you. They call the telecom company and say, no, this is me, I've got a new phone. And then all of a sudden now everything gets transferred to them, which is all the information on your phone. So that's a really big problem, as well as being able to accurately switch telecom companies going from section to section while roaming. So these are all being solved right now, and there's actually applications in the food industry as well. Any supply chain type example is a great use case for blockchain, and because it tracks from point A to point B to point C to point USD. For example, in the drug industry as well is another thing that happens there. So the food industry is able to monitor this now from, say, the manufacturer to the distributor to the wholesaler to the end customer, that actually gets the medicine. So, because if meds get in the wrong hand, it could be deadly. And so these are all things that are being done right now. So it's not the future. This is what's going on. And then closer to home, a lot of these are use cases that Algorand has on their blockchain. You've got Asset Block, which is used for tokenizing real estate assets. Tether just announced they have put their stable coin on blockchain. One of the problems with blockchains is that the cryptocurrency really fluctuates, goes from high to low very easily. And the Tether coin is mapped to USD. So US dollars, and it maps to it. And this way, whenever the US rate goes up or down, the Tether goes up and down accordingly. So that becomes a very good way of doing transactions in a stable manner. Also, you get to World Chess, right? They have plans for hybrid IPO on the Algorand blockchain. Actually, if we have time, I'll have a demo on the chess example that I have. And then flip side, crypto, enabling analytics for decentralizing apps on Algorand. So many partners and folks that are now building on Algorand. So let's talk about the core protocol next. And what we're going to cover here tonight is the core protocol. We're going to cover, we already covered use cases, and then we're going to get into some tools for the developers on board. How many developers we got? If you're a developer, go ahead, put your hand up, and then my brother's going to let me know that in a minute. And in the meantime, let's talk about the protocol. Now, this has to do with how the blocks are written to the chain. Some of you may have heard of, are familiar with Bitcoin or Ethereum, perhaps. Those are other types of blockchains that are out there, older in technology. What Bitcoin's about 10 years old now. And you may have heard of things like forks and proof of work. We don't use either of those with Algorand, and there's no mining, for example. That's what a proof of work is all about, is having very expensive and high electrical consuming computers that solve these math problems in order to build a block. And forks occur when you got multiple miners bidding to create the next round, and sometimes forks get generated, and there's only going to be one winner. And so you get orphan forks. So this provides, a lot of wasted time. In particular, it takes 10 minutes to build a block in those technologies. With Algorand, we use the Byzantine agreement in conjunction with, really some pure math. And for those that aren't familiar with the Byzantine agreement, basically you have, how the story goes is you got a bunch of generals, and they want to determine if they need to attack or not to an empire. And so what you have to have is all of them communicating with each other. And so a lot of times that may not happen. You may have a messenger that gets, bad weather and can't make it to the next general to deliver the message. Some of them get corrupt. Some of them, who knows what could happen, in that communication process. And then it gets really, it's a matter of size versus cost, right? Once you multiply this out and get to bigger networks, then you get some quadratic functions that are in a mix. So 10 people is like 100 times the cost. 1 million people would be 1 million squared, which that should be an insurmountable cost. Well, Sylvia Macaulay, our founder and Turing Award winner, figured it out. You really don't need everyone to participate. What you need is a representative sample. And that's exactly what we do, and that's how we create the block. So the Algorand blockchain is a pure proof of stake blockchain. It's public and permissionless, and all users can participate in the consensus. Blocks are confirmed by voting. Every token, in other words, every algo carries the same voting power. An algo is what our cryptocurrency is called. And by the way, the cryptocurrency is just an example of a type of application or an asset that you can create on a blockchain. There are many others. It's not blockchains are all about cryptocurrency. That's certainly not the case. And the second to last bullet is very important too. There's no need to delegate or bond the proof of stake. We are a pure proof of stake. So with delegated proof of stake, you have delegates that do the voting, and they are known ahead of time. So they are subject to denial of service attacks. And then bonded proof of stake is where you have folks that will put up a bond or money that promise to behave on the blockchain. And if they misbehave, then they will be penalized, and but then it's a matter of perspective, right? You could put a bond up of $1 million, but if you stand to trying to make $1 trillion, and that's a small amount. And also, they are known ahead of time. So once again, that's a denial of service required. And then the nodes for Algorand, these are minimal compute required. And you can run a node on a Raspberry Pi. And all a node is basically a local copy of the database. Everybody has access to the database. Could be on your machine, could be on a Raspberry Pi like I showed. So the actual process when you generate a block looks as follows. A small committee is chosen from a random set of all the users. And then the committee agrees on the block of transactions, and every member verifies the transactions, so there's no double spending or anything like that going on, and digitally signs it. So then at that point, the block is added to the chain. And this happens in under 5 seconds. So 5 seconds versus 10 minutes I had talked about before to create a block. Now you can see the possibility, for example, a point of sale using the Algorand blockchain. I like these next 2 slides because they really kind of go over. I know I had these questions when I first started learning about blockchain, like what is a public blockchain? It's one that's a permissionless blockchain. In other words, there's no, sign-on required. And on the other hand, a private blockchain is a permissioned blockchain. So what kind of apps can you build? Again, when I was first learning this, the ones in the upper right corner kind of made sense, right? Public and open. Currencies, betting, video games, those all look like those would be doable. But what about these other ones like voting? Well, that would be public, but it's closed because you want the voting part to people to vote publicly. And maybe the voting records you want to be closed until the voting's all over, or something like that. And then you get down to the bottom half where you got a private and open would be like a supply chain or government financial records. And then the private and closed would be, like law enforcement and military or some things that are very, very private. So, public blockchains like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and now Algorand, we also refer to as a permissionless blockchain, meaning that they really strive by design to increase the user's anonymity. Basically, you can always use these open public platforms to build a permission solution. And you just need to be aware that it's upon you, your architects, and your developers to create that permissioning model. And it all starts with some kind of identity management system. So in Algorand, we have a note field that is free form. So any layer 2 app can build anything permissioned that they want. And Algorand will not enforce the permission rules through that. It has to be done through a layer 2 application. So what's the difference between layer 1 and layer 2 for those that are new? Basically, a layer 1 application is right on the blockchain. These are facilitated, from block to block. Layer 2 might involve like an SDK, for example, that would be going ahead and creating a Python solution or a JavaScript solution that might incorporate authentication, right? That would be responsible of the application's part. So that can like sit on top of the blockchain, and that's how it would facilitate all these other types of blockchain apps. All right, so specifically, let's get down to the Algorand 2.0 and what it can do. All right, you got a permissionless blockchain, scales to billions of users. Enterprise speed, more than 1,000 transactions per second with under 5-second latency. In its instant finality, no soft forks, every transaction is committed to the chain is final. Then we get to some really great features. I'm going to show you a demo on this as well. Organizations can easily create their own assets with double spending protection guaranteed by the protocol. Assets are basically you know, like tokens, for example. You know, an asset could represent stable coins, loyalty points, credits, in-game credits. If you're doing a game, just to name a few. We're going to probably push out a Jethro Tull puzzle game, and we'll put tokens on the blockchain that you can, you know, get as part of that game, for example. And then assets may represent like the same type, like a stable coin. Those are referred to as fungible assets, and single unique assets are referred to as non-fungible. Also, we have atomic multi-party transactions. Again, these are all in layer one. And so many times you may have a series of transactions. John's got to pay Jane, Jane's got to pay Joe, and all of this has to happen or none of it's going to happen. So that's very analogous to like a SQL Server transaction for those that are familiar with SQL Server. And then smart contracts, right? Small programs written in assembly-like language that can be used as a replacement for signatures in a transaction. And that's called transaction executable language, or TEAL. Also, there's a Python extension called PyTeal that's available, so you can use that to help create some of your smart contracts as well. Getting into talking about nodes, there's a great spot in our website, developer.algorand.org, that gets you work set up. And then you can create your own node on a Mac, Ubuntu server, other Linux distros like a Raspberry Pi. It can take a long time to sync initially, over 10 hours. So PureSync is an option. It's indexed and archived in instant sync. And they just give you like a node token and the URL, and you're off and running, and you can create applications instantly. Same thing with the sandbox, but the sandbox is just for testnet. PureSync can go to mainnet as well. We have 3 different networks: BetaNet for new stuff, testnet, which mirrors mainnet. All the features are identical, but it's where you build, right? That's where you test things out. Sandbox works with testnet. So the Docker, it's a Docker instance, not for production. It's a snapshot. There's no sync time. That's what I'm going to be using tonight. And then also we have SDKs in Go, Java, JavaScript, and Python. And then also there's a new C# SDK available as well in the community. I highly recommend you go to developer.algorand.org. Check out the new site, new portal. We just launched it a couple days ago. Check out the tutorial section. I wrote about 24 tutorials out there on a lot of the things I'm going to show you here tonight. So now it's demo time. Let's go ahead and get this chess game up. We'll show you that first. What I'm going to do here is recover the players first. The recovery of the player, I'm going to pass in the mnemonic key that I derived when I created it. So this is a long string of words. And I normally wouldn't be sharing that with anybody, but for testing purposes, that's how we're going to recover this player. You can see up here, there's his the ID number for player 1. Player 2, we're going to do the same thing. And let's go ahead and recover this player. And then also what I've done here is I've turned on the logging, so you can see the logging on the right as we do things. So right now what we're going to do is find a match here, and we're going to find a match here. And now you can see they're searching on the blockchain. You see who's got a transaction that's looking for a game. And so now you can see we got this PJ player, you've got the D3 player. You can see and what you're seeing here is the note field, by the way. That's where we store the player IDs, and also the state of the game is, you know, you can have any structure you want into that note field. And there we go. So now we got our player 1 and player 2 populated. We have a new game ID that's associated with these games. So white to move, so that will be the player on the right. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll go ahead and move this player out. And then you should see it replicate over here. And once it does, then the black player will move. And these are all, you know, using blockchain calls. So we use one to generate a player, we use another to recover a player, we use another one to search a transaction. Every time we're making a move, we're making a transaction. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually show you some of the basic code that's behind this. And so I'm going to go ahead and stop this, and we're not going to have a winner here because I want to make sure I get through everything here. But then what I'm going to do is bring up the next demo, and this is going to be a demo where we're going to actually do all these functions, and I'll show you the code. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and get the latest block. So this has information about it. the block number, the time, and all that kind of stuff. Right now we're going to generate account. So now we've created an account. So this is the from. What we're going to do with this demo is we're going to transfer some algos from the from account to the to account. We're going to transfer this amount right here. And in order to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first get the account details, and I'm going to copy this address of the new account that we just created. Then I'm going to go to the Algorand dispenser, which is a testnet dispenser. So this is how we're going to get some fake algos in the testnet environment to that account so that it could be sent. It also covers things like transaction fees as well. So now let's go back to the app, and I'm going to say, okay, let's recover this account from the mnemonic, which is right up here. And once I recover it, then you can see now this has got an amount there, and it's got the, it gives you 100 algos, and these are micro algos, so there's 6 digits of precision there. And then the next step is going to be to submit this transaction. And what we're going to do then is go ahead and get the transaction from that, which has the note field with a structure in it that you can see right here. And that is going to, I'm going to show you that right now inside the code. So let's go ahead and bring up VS Code. All right, the first thing I want to show you is the sandbox, right? So this was the, just go out to our GitHub site, which was GitHub DevRel, not GitHub, GitHub. All right, Algorand-DevRel. You can see, you'll see one repository here is called Hackathon. That's where I got all the code from that I'm going to show you. And the other one, the sandbox, is on the Algorand repository. And so you can see right there it is. There's the sandbox. So all the instructions are right on here. You just download this, install Docker, download it, and it's real easy. It runs on Windows, runs on Mac, it runs you know, all over the place. And this is where you can actually do things like just put commands in like goal node status. Right, so this is going to return back the block, you know, information. Last committed, sync time is 0, right? And it's you can see you're going up against testnet, that sort of thing. This is what I am going to be talking to in my app. Is the node and the URL here. And if you looked at that site when it came out, it says it right down here what those are. All right, here's the address. Here's the token. So now what I'm going to do is show you the code. So we'll bring up the other Visual Studio instance I have with, I got JavaScript code I'm going to show you here. So this is what's being executed in that last function we looked at. So here's the block status. So you go ahead and instantiate the SDK, and then the client, you can get the status, return the block, and that's what got printed out. Here's the one that creates the account, very similar, generate an account. And then you have secret key to mnemonic that gets run. And then the last step here is getting the transaction note field. And so when you actually do a transaction, we're doing a couple things. Number one, we're populating this person field into the note. So there we're going to encode it. And so now the person field has been populated note. And then these are the parameters to the transaction call. And then we're going to sign it and then send raw transaction, sends it out to the blockchain. The final step is then doing the reverse, taking it, that's, you know, your application knows how that's structured. So that's, again, the structure. Then we're going to encode it and then do the last transaction here and then sign it right there and then send it out. So that's kind of the structure. And while I'm here, let's go ahead and show you the last demo. And this is going to be the one that does the, it's the asset example where you can create an asset. So here you can see where I put that code in, right, to talk to this. So I'm just going to go ahead and fire this up in the debugger. I've got a breakpoint set. You can see here, and it's going to hit it. This is going to make the asset. So in order to create an asset, you got to give the name of it. So this could be, you know, Jethro Tull coin or Mike coin or whatever, and some URL. whether it's frozen or not, and then you have the creation account. And then also you could specify these manager roles, a manager, a reserve, freeze, and clawback functions. So I'm going to just press go here. It's going to make the transaction. You'll see the three numbers here. So TH is account 1, AJ is account 2, 3Z is account 3. And then it gets down to the next one, and you can see the asset ID that was created here of 341498. Now that's on the blockchain. So now you actually got an asset out there. I'm going to hit run again. So now we're going to make an asset configuration change. So the management roles are changed up, and now the creator, we began with TH, is also going to have a manager role that you can see right down here once this expands. All right down there. So these are, I'm going to go ahead and let this continue running, and the next step is going to be opt into the transaction. Again, there's another call that facilitates doing that, and that's basically sending a zero amount to yourself to say, okay, account 3 is going to be able to accept this transaction. Now I'm going to actually issue 10 of those new assets that I just created. So you can make your own coin if you wanted to on our blockchain. This to me is the most exciting feature of the blockchain, and a lot of folks are using this. And anytime you got to use some kind of digital asset, you can do that. And the rest of these method calls in here will do things like freeze the account. They'll go ahead and do things like revoke do a clawback and get the information back from the account. And then finally, when you get done, once you have all the assets back in one account, you can go ahead and delete it. So let me go back to the deck then, and I could summarize, and we got time for maybe a question or two here from anybody if you got a question. And let me go ahead and bring the deck back up here one more time. And so some resources are in here. The sample code, once again, is at that DevRel hackathon. If you want to take a picture of this, you can. Great video on the consensus. That's about 5 minutes long. I encourage you to go out to the developer site. It's awesome. We've really been putting a lot of work into that, and everything happens for a reason, right? We're not doing traveling for events, so that's giving more time for the DevRel team to build content. And boy, it's been very enjoyable, having that time to do that. So it's pretty good. It's difficult for me anyway to create content when I'm traveling on the road. And then node setup, how you set nodes up if you do want to run a node on your machine. There is a community member that is working on setting up running a node on Windows. We don't have that capability yet, and I think he's pretty close to sharing that GitHub. So stay tuned to my tweets and the Algorand newsletter you can sign up for on our developer site as well, and you get that information on a weekly basis. This is the slide Gary was talking about. So you got in business SEO, .net. That's where he will post a recording of this video here right in the middle.